Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we've got Wednesday action here. Another big old slate. 12 games on the slate tonight here for us on Wednesday. So we're going to be looking at some best bets in this episode. Got some sides and totals looks for you. Also have player prop bets up in a separate episode. So make sure to subscribe to that page and continue to follow along with us all season. Let's go ahead and jump right into your first play here, Nate. We did better once again on the player props last night than the sides and totals. You at least got that dub. I got to come back with it today. So let's get right into your first look here for Wednesday night.
Yeah, pretty tough to forecast when 70% of the teams are on back-to-backs last night, but a little bit more of a normal situation here. Let me take the Mavs minus 1.5 at NOLA. Just a normal situation where I think the Mavs are clearly the better team, even without Lively and Doncic, which is where they're at right now. Pelicans, of course, missing some guys as well, but like Zion, it's fun when Zion's in, but like, what is the end game here? Like, they're 4-8 with him. The offensive rating almost identical, and the last two have been particularly gross on offense. And this is not a team that's going to win without an offensive explosion in the Pelicans. It seems CJ and Trey Murphy a little out of rhythm with Zion, getting back to his full usage. Defensively, they are atrocious without Herb Jones. As I mentioned, they're probably the worst paint defense in the league, or in the running, depending where we're at specifically. So now facing a Mavs team that in their last four has really ramped up the rim pressure, top 10 in basically every category you want to see in terms of attacking the rim, coming off a easy as fuck win over the Wizards. So almost a rest advantage here. Kyrie only had to score 13 in that one. And then Omax, I think, led them in scoring. So like they are well rested and prepared for this one. And Kyrie, even with Nola, possessing some actual decent rim protectors in recent years, he's averaged 31 and 7 with a 133 offensive rating against this team. I think that the Mavs have better defensive options to throw at Zion and PJ, our guy, and still have Gafford back there protecting the rim than the Pels will to try to deal with Kyrie here. Pels' biggest weakness is the corner three, right? I mean, allowing the most in the NBA in their last 10. In the last 4, they're down to second because the Washington Wizards are putting on a tank show, which is just impressive to watch. But so, I mean, Dallas just scored 138 against the Wizards because of that corner three defense, right? Klay Thompson staying hot. Definitely basket looks big for him. Interesting that he is, pretty even money here to hit 3 triples. Might want to look at that in terms of any kind of parlays. I mean, you can get plus money just Kyrie 20 and the Mavs win here because it is such a small thing. Spread, Dallas is shooting 55% on their corner threes in the last 4 with Klay getting hot. And then on the other side, like Pels are going to be heavily dependent on fast break points, free throw attempts when they're playing Zion ball. Dallas is a really good transition D. No matter who's in there, I mean, probably a much better transition D without Luka. So I guess that shouldn't be surprising because nobody's back complaining the refs and playing 4-on-5 defensively. They've been the number 2 transition D on the road all season. They lost this last matchup with the Pels because it was a back-to-back and Kyrie wasn't there. And it was still down to the wire with like Jaden Hardy leading them. So give me the Mavs to try to get this thing rolling.
Yeah. I mean, I think this will be a decent game anyway, in terms of the spread being pretty close for a reason. But I would still rather have. I mean, I don't know what to do with Nola. Every time they're full strength, and I'm like, they have 3 players better than half the guys, like more than 80% of the other team and their starting lineup, and they still just lose. They're like you said, everything's clunky. It doesn't look good together. And as long as Dallas at this point has like Kyrie, Gafford, and PJ Washington, they're a slightly different squad, but they're formidable enough. And we'll see them. They've gotten some bad losses over the course of this time without Luka because they end up going down and then they just kind of rest everybody because everybody's already hurt anyway. So they just kind of punt. And I think that's why you've seen a little bit more of like a couple blowouts for them over the last like 2 to 3 weeks. But those were obviously not against teams struggling like NOLA. So I'm with that one. Was kind of struggling to figure out how to play this game. And I did land on just taking Sacramento -9 at the 76ers on the second leg of that back to back after Tyrese Maxey went balls to the wall against the Lakers to help the 76ers win. Also helped that AD got hurt in the first quarter of that game. That definitely cemented things, I would say, for the Lake Show, who were just continuing to play on a lack of rest, to be honest. But for Sac, this is a lot about them turning things around and looking a little bit more like Sacramento that stole our hearts by playing really, really fast a couple of years ago, claiming what was the 3 seed before losing to the 6 seed Dubs in the first round of the playoffs. But this does remind me a lot more of that team, and I imagine we'll see this team, this iteration of the Kings, as soon as De'Aaron Fox probably isn't around and Malik Monk is running things a bit more, probably continue to see that pace stay high. And I think Monk has a lot to do with that. His individual rating is pushing things up. But Philly, while they are 5-2 to the over on no rest, I can't trust them at this point. We're probably not going to have Paul George. There's a outside chance that he plays. If he does, one, do you trust him to finish the game? And two, how big of an impact is he going to have after he had to leave in the middle of the game a couple games ago there in their loss? So I don't know that you can trust this offense. I don't think you can trust the pace or much of anything, to be honest. Sac for them over the last 12 games been playing very fast, and that's what I'm talking about here. Their games have been averaging 240. They're scoring 123 a game over the course of these last 12 games, where they've gone over in 9 of 12. But they've also finally been covering and playing a lot better. And what they're going to be able to do is just score at the rim all day. And that's why I initially was thinking Lakers yesterday. I mean, if they had Anthony Davis, who scores 60% of his points next to the rim, then they would have gotten there, because Adem Bona and Gershon Yabusele aren't it down low. I think we can all attest to that. That's why Philly is third worst limiting points right next to the rim this season. And they've been that for the entirety of the season, with Joel, without Joel, with Drummond, without Drummond. Doesn't really matter. They do rely a bit more on being able to defend you on the perimeter. They've been relying on points off of turnovers, because they're playing a lot of small ball out of necessity without a center available for them. And they're not going to be able to turn this Kings team over, who has been really, really good limiting those turnovers over the course of basically the season. But in the last 12, especially, they are number one in offensive turnover percentage, limiting that to a very, very good degree there, taking care of the ball, getting to the rim. The free throws, not as good for them, but I think they're going to be able to get there against Philly, who has been giving up the 5th worst free throw attempt rate over their last 10 games. And then it's, like I said, all about getting into the paint, and Philly has been relying on perimeter play to keep guys out of the paint. But now you've got guys getting into the paint with the highest frequency in the league against Philly. So whether they make the shot or not, they're getting in there to take the shots. And all of those offensive rebounds that might come off a front rim or a back rim just feel like they're just going to land right in Domas's big paws, as he's at a 15.5 rebound prop right now, for probably good reason. And it could get up to 16.5 in some books, to your point. So it opened at 16.5. It's gone to 15.5. It's probably going to waver back and forth. It's just an absurd line to show you that he's probably good for like 8 offensive boards in this one. Going to lead to a bunch of putbacks, and they should be winning this thing by double digits.
Yeah, I saw 17.5 at one point here on the odd shopper tool. But yeah, I think Domas is just going to destroy Yabusele, do what AD could not do because he couldn't stay out on the floor here. I mean, Eric Gordon has been starting. He played 31 minutes last night, so I don't know if he's going to be able to dust himself off for a back-to-back. The last tough rest spot for the Sixers, they gave up an insane amount of paint points and just points in general to the Nuggets. Yeah, I don't trust them to come along for the ride if this is high scoring. And the Kings, the only hang up you have is with the De'Aaron Fox trade request out there, how is that going to impact chemistry and stuff? But I don't think it's going to matter for guys like Sabonis and DeRozan, who are just really consummate pros. And I mean, you do have Keon Ellis to put on Maxey, who lets you do that again against a team that's actually out there gunning and on short and with you at a rest disadvantage. So
yeah.
Let me take the Pistons +7. Speaking of rest disadvantage, because the Pacers are back from Paris and only one day off after, the time difference. This is kind of an NFL fade that we talk about all the time when you have to go to England, but it's even bigger of a difference, and you only have one day. I mean, the Pacers were playing pretty good ball. They obviously just completely split results out there across the pond, but they had gone under in 7 of their 8 before the Paris trip. And if you're going to go under, I'm not really trusting you to cover 7 against this Pistons team that just is really solid in a lot of defensive departments we had talked about. But before they lost their last 2 against Orlando and Cleveland, we had talked about how well they've been playing. They had won straight up. There's 7 of the previous 8 roadies against some pretty good teams. And you look at where they're solid defensively is, number 7 3-point defense, number 4 assists allowed in their last 4. You look, it goes down to number 2 in 3-point defense, number 6 paint points, number 3 transition D on the season. So everything you need to probably slow down this Pacers team. The biggest weakness is they allow a lot of free throws, and the Pacers are 4th lowest free throw rate in this span. Pacers on the other side allowing 8th most paint points in January, and Detroit has gotten at least 50 paint points in 3 straight matchups. They didn't cover this number in the last matchup because they shot really poorly from 3. Lost by 11, but won the rebounding battle by 15. Had 17 second chance points. Duren 17-17 game. You can get plus 140 on a Duren double-double with the Pistons at alt all the way up to double digits here, and just say like they keep this even moderately close. So that's a look I might be going with here. Expect him to have success down low. Pistons are against the spread 64% after a loss, 64% as road dogs on the season. And Nemhard might not go as well here for the Pacers, but really it's just like let's see how they react to the time change difference and everything that goes into it. And now you face a pretty physical team that's gunning to break a 2-game skid.
Yeah, no, I like this a lot. I think this is a solid look here for a Pistons team that's still pretty underrated, to be honest. And I think they'll continue to have some success, especially because of the way they defend and rebound and limit assists. So they defend pretty well. You're going to have to score a lot more off the one-on-one with them, and I don't see the Pacers doing that unless they can just get this pace torrid. But yeah, 7 points is probably too much, like you said, with the comeback, the come down and play. It's going to be like midnight in their brains when they're playing this game, essentially maybe like 2 a.m, whatever time this starts out there in Indy. So yeah, let's go ahead and get to Toronto, Washington. Not exactly what you want to hear when you're watching an NBA video if you're talking about exciting basketball, but don't look now. Toronto's not that bad, man. I think what's interesting about Toronto, and they just played that Pelicans team and beat them. And what's interesting about them is like I've been saying the same thing about them for the whole season. Like if you look at their roster, if they were healthy, there's a basketball team there. There's a legitimate NBA team with the starters and even the first 2 to 3 guys off their bench. If we're being honest, between Bruce Brown and Chris Boucher, Jamal Shed is nothing to sneeze at there as a young point guard as well. Like they've got the guys, they just haven't been healthy, including like Agbaji probably not going to play, but they're better than the Wizards with this iteration of their team. Quickly, no quickly, whatever. I will also say, love you, IQ. I really think he's good. I don't think he's bad on defense, but he ain't Davion Mitchell on defense. And Davion Mitchell has been getting a lot more time as a result, and that's led to them limiting point guards. Just got to take Jordan Poole out of the game, and I don't know what else is going to happen with the Wizards team, right? I think that's really what it comes down to, and they're going to be able to do that with Davion. So let's just leave that there. In the last 10, the Raptors straight up are 6-4. In their last 5, they're 4-1, and they've covered 70% of the games over their last 10 as well. They're 8th in defensive rating. They have the 8th hardest strength of schedule in that time frame as well. So they're not playing cupcakes in their last 10 games. This is enough of a sample size for me to go like they got some nice wins in there, and they've been competitive with all the teams that they haven't beaten as well. A couple of things here against the Wizards. Like, however you score, you can probably do that against the Wizards. They don't have a forte on defense. There's no specialty that they're good at. They're bad at everything, but they're particularly bad at limiting anything going to the rim, getting back into transition. Both those things very related. Limiting free throws, can't do any of it. Alex Sarr is questionable, so might have more Joval, may see him 25 plus minutes in this game. So they'll be a little bit better, I suppose, like a little bit better than the slightly undersized Alex Sarr, who's a lot more of a versatile. That's where his skill set lies. But the Raptors, 5th in rim frequency. They are 4th in transition frequency over the last 10 for both, and also on the season they are getting out to transition top 5 most in the league as well. So I think both those things are going to be important. If you look at the other side of the ball, I do believe Pirtle's going to be able to neutralize anything coming into the paint. Not that they're really doing that. This is totally a jump shooting team. They are 3rd in above the break frequency shots from above the break 3. Jordan Poole, some Bob Carrington, Kyle Kuzma. That's what it is. We just had the quote from Kyle Kuzma saying, literally, "I'm done playing within the system of the offense," was the exact quote that the Washington team clipped from the media clip that Kyle Kuzma said that. And the other reporters had to put it out on Twitter like, did anybody else hear this? He literally said, "I'm not playing within the system because I got to do me. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to score." So, like, good luck with all of that in Washington. I don't know if there's trades coming for them or not, but they're beyond a dumpster fire. And Toronto is a team on the right trajectory right now. So appreciate you bringing to my attention. Like 6.5, 7 points is a really good number still for Toronto.
Yeah, Washington is skilled and adept at tanking here.
Yep.
14 straight losses, and only one of them by 6 points. So they've covered they're 113 against this number recently in January. So yeah, don't see that turning around. Toronto with Bruce Brown playing pretty well. He's one of the guys showcasing on the positive side to get traded out of town. And
Yep.
I mean, I don't think the vibes are that low. I mean, is Toronto last year around this time they pulled the plug to protect their lottery pick, but now this year they get a chance to actually like be developmental with and let Scotty and RJ see what they can do together, maybe even get IQ back in the lineup eventually. But yeah, they're going out there trying to win, and Washington is not. So let's go.
It's pretty much that simple with some of these teams right now. But that's all the time we have for you in this one. Definitely make sure to subscribe to that page. You can also check out the player props bets that we brought you for today. And until we see you next, happy betting.